to turn blue, which it has done. And we're live. It is Friday, March 19th, 2021, 5:02 p.m. It is 2:02 p.m. where Alex Vindman is sitting in sunny Southern California.
Oh my God, with the hills. Oh my God, stop it, Alex.
It is,
really?
It is, I guess, 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock. I guess 11 o'clock Estonia time. And 9 o'clock.
No, it's not anymore because of daylight saving.
Oh yeah, maybe 10 o'clock. And 9 o'clock UTC, or 9:03. We're going to talk Vladimir Putin because we can, and he wants us to. And by the way, it links really interesting ways with a piece that Alex Vindman wrote on Lawfare earlier this week. So,
can I ask a question first? Am I allowed to ask stupid questions about Putin? And
there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Well, I mean, there is that. So Ben, before you make this serious, okay, or even semi-serious, and before you monologue about your shirt, which you have to do, I want to say that my primary understanding of Putin is based on his shirtless riding of a horse. And that's basically just like what I picture every time I see him on the news in a suit. I am like, no, I saw you like Fabio with your hair, with fake hair behind you, shirtless riding.
Just understand that is exactly what he wants you to think. You are a victim of the Russian propaganda machine.
I know. And I'm like, I'm just a stupid American that's like, oh my God, this Russian leader, he seems so great.
He's so strong. And manly. Yes. We are not allowed to have fun anymore. But for everybody who has complained about the dog shirts, I just want you all to notice plain shirt, Ben, here. It's plain, it's boring, it is not weird, it is not, it doesn't have eye, it's not staring at you, it is not nipply. Nobody can complain about this shirt.
There's no cannons on it.
There are no cannons, there's no murder hornets. So I just want to say, if you are one of the anti-dog shirt people, this is the world you're asking for. And we're going to have a poll about plain, boring shirt versus dog shirt.
There's no million holes in it.
There aren't a million holes. And so, we are not allowed to have fun anymore. And today we are not allowed to have dog shirts. We have nice button-down plaid shirts for Kate and Alex, and we've got plain old gray shirt for me. So, you tell me, people, now, do dog shirts rock or not?
You go make that poll, and I'm going to say hello to our guest. Hello, Alex Vindman. It was so nice to see you again. It has been a minute since the last time that you were on. Ben is making a very important poll about his shirt. I would just like to say, I think that both of us, we didn't coordinate this, but we did, it just happened just because of the fates. But Alex, what is your take on Putin riding a horse shirtless?
Well,
propaganda or true fact?
Yeah, even before we get, it's, I think, this is part of, it's propaganda, clearly, is the legit answer, but it's also who he is. He's a bear shirt riding horse, a cowboy. I mean, I don't know, Russian cowboy.
Isn't that kind of interesting? That one is.
Well, he's also a fireman. He's a fighter pilot. He's a fisherman. He's every man. I mean, these are
wrestle tigers.
He carries injured leopards for
treasure hunter. He's an archaeologist. These are all constituencies that he's appealing to. But this is the kind of look that you get when Ben gives me like an hour
constituency. But
an hour and a half of notice or so. You get the unshaved Alex.
You look great. We're so happy to have you here. Oh my God. Ben and I were both like, crap, we've had 3 people like fall out of the thing. Well, we're totally desperate. We might as well ask Alex. So Alex, welcome to
I'm the guy that he calls when he has like literally like an hour's worth of notice, an hour and a half.
It's actually like not really how it works, but that is what it might look like to someone on the outside. But that's actually not how I feel about it at all, or Ben. But I am super glad to have you here.
So I want to start off with a very serious question, which is Vladimir Putin has been ducking my challenge for a fist fight for 5 years now. And, I am actually have been sort of out of shape. I'm like, this would be a good time for him, candidly, to get on the train. But yesterday he offers to debate the president in this kind of macho way that's kind of reminiscent of like, I'll meet you outside. And Fox News goes for it. And they are like pro-Putin in this. Mm-hmm. And so my question is, why is Fox News excited about Putin's challenge to Biden, but hasn't given 1 ounce of coverage to my challenge to Putin?
I mean, I'd go so far as to argue that Fox News would like to see Putin beat up Biden in a fight. I mean, they would be happy. As un-American as that sounds, we would want our president to win any fights. Fox News would be more than happy to have Putin whoop up on Joe Biden. Except in this case, I think Biden could take him. I mean, even though there's an age disparity, I think he could take him. He's got the height and the reach. Putin's kind of a little. You could just hold him back, like in a cartoon.
I don't know.
No, incorrect. I'm like not trying to be a jerk here, but like, there's no way.
He's got back issues. He's got back issues. There's all sorts of different things.
I defer to you on all matters, Putin, but I have studied his fight videos.
He rides a horse like regularly and wrestles tiger kittens.
Look, I'll put my money where my mouth is. I would put money on Biden beating up Putin.
It's a total hypothetical, though, because it's not.
Yeah, it's hypothetical.
So I have actually studied Putin's fighting pretty carefully. I've spent some time with those videos. There are aspects of them that are fake and aspects of them that are real. And the question, I think, in a fight between Putin and Biden is really whether Biden could land a punch before Putin could get a grab. Because Putin has some actual judo skills, and if he were to get into a grappling situation with Biden, I suspect Biden can't handle that. But I wouldn't want to be hit with a punch from Joe Biden.
Look, Ben, I'm going to go ahead and throw this out here. I know that you have a 5-year challenge with Putin. I actually used to fight military combatives. I've got videos. Maybe we'll put them up as a kind of intro to point. I would be happy to fight Putin.
Oh yeah,
and I think that
Putin is all the videos are staged. They're all fake. There is some genuine skill there on the. He knows how to take falls. He knows how to sort of do, and he was once a very fine judo practitioner. I do not believe he would last 10 minutes in a ring with somebody who knows how to punch and kick.
Do you agree? On fighting. I was a mixed martial artist for again a brief stint. I had a chance to train with Orion Gracie, Royce Gracie's older brother. But anyway, I think he probably could handle his own. I think he could probably take down Donald Trump. I think he could handle that. But Joe Biden looks like he's a little more fierce. I think he could. I don't want to be partisan here. I'm just doing a fighter's assessment, and
I'm really sorry. Joe Biden seems like an old guy. Like there's no way. I
don't know.
Really?
Biden is look. So he fell on the stairs of Air Force One today.
He did.
Yeah, he did. Look, he's not. On the other hand, he works out. He's pretty fit. He's had a recent injury. I don't. He's clearly not at the top of his game, but I don't know. He's also 12 years older than Putin, right?
I was just gonna say that he's just older at a time when they're both. I'm not saying that Putin is like some great fighter. I'm saying that like Joe Biden does like in the 8 years that the 4 years that were the Trump presidency, I feel like Biden did age like a fair amount. Like, and like I don't want to like. I feel like I should be able to say that without it being like this huge aspersion upon his entire presidency and his competency. Like, I think that the man is like a fairly elder gentleman. I think that he is there physically and mentally, but I do think that he is like maybe not as spry as someone 12 years younger than him. 12 years ago, Biden, when he was the same age as Putin is now, I would have completely agreed with you.
Okay, so Alice Lee has flagged the real question here, which is Major Biden v. Putin. Should he, like, Biden just sick the dogs on Vladimir Putin? And then it's over, right?
What I would like to see is I'd like to see either a debate or a fight between Alexei Navalny and Putin. That would be a much if it would show true courage if Putin didn't challenge Biden, because that's not going to happen. But if he challenged, for instance, Alexei Navalny to debate, that would be courage. But he's refused to do that. So maybe
the serious side of this conversation, of which there really is one, is what is Putin trying to do here with the challenge to Biden, and secondly, what is his strategic objective here? So let's start with that. Biden calls Putin a killer. Granted, in response to a question, it probably wasn't premeditated, but he answers the question candidly, and the Russian press goes bananas, and Putin responds with this challenge. So what is the game on the Russian side here?
So there would be nothing more painful than if the Biden administration and Joe Biden just completely ignored Putin. But in a way, there's a little bit of a bait there, although it was unintentional. And Putin or Biden elevated Putin to kind of like a peer, somebody that the U.S. has to be concerned about, discuss. And Putin effectively seized the opportunity to then kind of continue to elevate himself as onto the global stage as a near peer competitor and challenge the United States. I would almost say it's a proxy for Russia challenging the United States, Putin challenging Biden. And that's really, he just sees the opportunity to kind of feed into that narrative, continue to make these kinds of motions and noises about the centrality of the U.S., of Russia, to the world stage, and as a near peer competitor to the U.S. I think it's something that he's done repeatedly, and he'll continue to do in the future.
Second question: What is Fox News's game in amplifying this on the pro-Putin side? And I want to use this.
I think this is a huge question. I'm so curious.
Strikes me as a really, like, if you had said Putin challenge, like beginning of the week, Putin challenges Biden to a debate, and Fox News weighs in heavy on Team Putin. I'm not sure I would have seen that one coming. I'm not sure I would have predicted the opposite, but it does seem a little bit, I don't know, on the unpatriotic side. What's your sense of what the Rupert Murdoch game is here?
That's frankly, there's not just a little unpatriotic. It's most unpatriotic. It's like, taking the adversary's side for whatever the case might be against your against the nation. But it's also been consistent with regards to Fox News advocating and promoting this highly partisan, very disruptive narrative, polarizing narrative that they've been advocating for the past 4 or 5 years. There's and it's, I guess the tie-in is to the piece that I wrote for Lawfare earlier this week, is there is a appetite that Fox News has itself generated and needs to feed. And that appetite is for more of this kind of content, hyper partisan content. Now that the Democrats and the Biden administration has been portrayed as an enemy, it's the greatest enemy as far as the constituency of Fox News, or the viewership of Fox News believes, greater than that of Russia, which in fact is by far a more dangerous adversary in terms of the kind of the existential threat, the ability to kind of harm the United States. I'm not saying that in kind of, I'm saying it in their aspirations. They really want to do harm to the United States. Can they do that kind of harm? Not really. It is a shadow of what it used to be in the Soviet period. But would they want to be able to do as much harm to the United States as possible? And for Fox News to kind of cater to that kind of view is really on brand, but very troubling.
Well, doesn't it seem like this weird confluence of like, it's not quite like, it isn't like the enemy is my friend. It is actually like even less principled than that. It is basically a bottom dollar type of kind of concern. Like Fox News is concerned with ratings and keeping some type of active controversy alive, keeps Fox News publishing this type of content. And but meanwhile, Russia has become much more targeted and does have a principled, ostensibly a principled under their principles kind of take and reason to be pushing the agenda that they're pushing. And so Fox News will swallow it hook, line, and sinker if it aligns and helps their bottom line without even having like kind of a second guess, which is kind of like, it's like ironically a problem with capitalism, but like, that's like, I'm curious, like what you think that like, how, if there needs to be an education of the public about that type of like kind of trade-off, those types of trade-offs happening, or whether you think those will sort itself out on the back end.
Well, I mean, I guess it's hard to call Fox a news channel, Fox News a news channel anymore, because it really is kind of the worst kind of entertainment. Kind of the historians will probably see a lot of connections to the yellow journalism at the late 19th century, early 20th century, just kind of outrageous, penny dreadful type stuff. And they're okay filling that kind of space because it does feed their bottom line. I think one of the things, again, that I advocated for in my piece, you couldn't do it. I don't think Joe Biden could necessarily sue them, but I think the legitimately aggrieved have an opportunity to contribute to the national good in a substantive way. And I think civil society actually has could play a role too, because resources are limited. These are costly endeavors to litigate against these major firms. But there should be kind of an effort for the most egregious type of behavior, legally slanderous or libelous attacks, depending on the medium, and going after them and hitting them in the pocketbooks, because that's really what drives their that, and the fact that they created an audience for this kind of material, the kind of Maury Povich type of daytime TV, and the demand is going to increase. Fox News would take a huge hit if they try to right the ship in this case. And the only way to change that cost benefit analysis for them is if there are $1 million suits or $1 million judgments that balance out against the potentially a loss of some segment of their viewership that is wants to consume this kind of stuff. But you also made this point of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. In this regard, their Fox News desire to generate these kinds of this kind of attention does align with Putin's interests to continue to generate some polarizing views of the United States, elevate Russia's stature. So there is kind of a strange type of alignment between Fox News and Putin's agenda here.
So when you I want to, there's a lot of threads here and I want to focus on a bunch of them, but let's start with how you would articulate the alignment between the two things you just described, which is Fox News's agenda and Putin's agenda. If we're thinking about the Venn diagram, or as Kate would say, the Venmo diagram overlap between...
No, we can't fucking say that, Ben. They pulled their sponsorship.
That's right.
Screw them.
No Venmo here. They are not the intersection of all things in the universe. So we're back to the regular Venn diagram. So if you're thinking about the Venn diagram overlap between Fox's interests and Russia's interests, how would you describe it?
Fox's interests are much more base. Again, feeding the beast of viewership and maintaining the kind of the preeminence of the largest news channel, the most viewed news channel, whereas Putin's interests are much more, are in a lot of ways a lot more sophisticated in that he sees an opportunity. I don't know if he could have intuited how it would play out in the domestic media space in the United States, but certainly in the Russian media space, it would play out well that, the Russian president challenges the U.S. president to a fight. So that was his calculation, is that, that would feed his kind of strongman image, feed this notion, this nostalgic notion of the U.S. and Russia duking it out, as the major players.
How far do we have to go back in human history to get to an era where heads of state were debating? Well, right. We weren't having people, citizen proxies, soldiers fight our wars, but actually we determined various types of territorial political conflict by duels. Or did that ever happen? I feel like it should have. Of
course. It definitely happened through the Middle Ages. I mean, there would be the king would also be the military leader, but eventually, once the cost of death in the Middle Ages for a king became too high, and you had experienced practitioners that took over those roles. But I'm thinking about that Brad Pitt movie with which is
totally accurate, historically accurate.
Yeah, historically accurate about Troy and where Achilles channels.
I don't know how to tell you this, but that was also written and it's kind of not necessarily historically accurate.
No, everything you've ever seen.
I think Eric Bana would win, right, in that fight. Eric Bana would win in a fight against Brad Pitt. So,
definitely. Yeah. Also, some of those guys that look almost like they are a man horse. There were a couple of these in Lord of the Rings where they just had these flared nostrils and they kind of looked like long hair. I was like,
Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Ring movies is a perfectly accurate history of New Zealand. That's actually, taught in elementary schools there as,
including the part with the possums.
Yeah, no, it's all true. Let's talk more about your article in Lawfare, because I think you made an argument that a lot of people are thinking about now, particularly in light of the voter systems suits against various officials and non-officials associated with Trump world. You make the argument that we should basically have more libel suits against right-wing media because they're routinely libeling people. They're engaged in monetizing defamation.
Mm-hmm.
And you express regret that you did not actually do it yourself. So I want to have you talk about that a little bit.
Sure.
What was the...
I would love to hear
I think everybody knows that like a lot of people said nasty things about Alex Vindman, but like, what was your, what are your top few and who do you wish you had filed suit against?
So I'll start with, there's an implicit theme in that article, which is a confidence in the judicial system working, and we saw that bear out at the conclusion of the elections, and then all the frivolous lawsuits being dismissed. And I guess when I was thinking about this, I recognized that, is there a real legitimate cost to infringement on the First Amendment? And my conclusion is no. If it's frivolous case being brought by somebody aggrieved, let's say Devin Nunes against a cow or something like that, it would be dismissed. And there's the biggest challenge is having the resources.
Devin Nunes' lawyer, by the way, is in the audience. She even identifies herself as Devin Nunes' lawyer in the chat. So just be careful what you say.
Sure. No, I think that's all good. Everybody deserves a defense. But again, I guess I believe in the court system was working. But I also believe that I missed, I guess, an opportunity to contribute to having the extreme media, not conservative media, although some of the personalities in response to my article, I triggered them, and they kind of labeled it going after conservatives. No, that's not the case. It's the right-wing media where the any kind of semblance of a truth narrative is irrelevant would proceed to pay a cost for these kinds of attacks. And that in some way chips away at this vicious cycle of feeding more extreme narratives into the system. So in my case, it was I tend to Rachel is real good about remembering all the things that I've done wrong. I don't, not that I've done many, but she has a good bank of you messed this up 2 years ago on this day. And so she kind of yeah, and I have nothing to say because I don't remember. I was like, what are we talking about? That was perfectly fine. But so she really kind of felt this more viscerally, that we there were a number of these events, and in writing the article, it was interesting having to do the kind of the research to kind of catalog all of the events, and it becomes pretty compelling when you stack them all together on how. There was an effort to undermine my credibility, attack my character, and so forth by the government, as well as proxy media, and the kinds of things that come to mind, were for somebody that doesn't even pay attention to it, would be the threats of he'll get his, there's more information coming out of him coming from the president of the United States. I'm like, okay, I'm curious at what you have. Let's see what let's see where this goes. But these types of things are obviously harmful to serving member of the military, from the commander in chief. They're extremely harmful for my ability to serve in overseas positions as a military officer in embassies and things of that nature. So those are the kinds of events that have come to mind. And also there was this, personality that nobody probably even remembers his name. He was a lieutenant colonel, retired, that proceeded to attack me. And I kind of took that a little bit personally, because he was a fellow, Army officer, although a retiree, that decided to kind of weigh in on as a political partisan, which is not who I am. I will tell you my thoughts on Trump. And I will tell you on my thoughts on people that kind of carry the water for Trump, but that's not. I completely dissociate that from some sort of, partisan views. It's just that I see it as harmful to the nation. That's where I take my person.
Sorry, go ahead, Kate.
So one of the things, I'm just going to make a general statement. So like one of the things that I teach when I teach defamation law to my students is this general idea that defamation, like filing a defamation suit ends up being, in fact, it's colloquially called the Barbra Streisand effect. It like revolves around a very small circulated like newspaper that published some defamation about Barbra Streisand that no one had read. It was like 1,000 people and it wasn't that big a deal. And she then blew it up into this, she didn't blow it up. She went to go litigate it and basically they had defamed her. And there was the untrue information that was published. It was out there in the public record. And she went to go correct it. And she filed a suit for defamation. And it was seen as very anti-press, very anti-free speech. And it was also seen, which is very typical, by the way, of any defamation suit. And then it was also seen as basically being accentuating her problem, which is to say that like it makes the problem worse. It makes the thing that you want to go away almost certainly not going to go away for at least another X number of months or years until this is like adjudicated.
But I think the Streisand effect and the Vinman effect are very different. So the Streisand effect is fundamentally about privacy, right? There's a momentary privacy invasion, and everybody will forget about it because news about celebrities is super ephemeral, and it'll go away, but then you litigate it, and you keep it in the news for years and years and years, right? The Vinman effect is a different problem. You're nobody. You're like literally an anonymous active duty military officer. You cannot respond to allegations being made by the president and his proxies. And then all of a sudden, you're being accused of espionage and of being an operative on behalf of a foreign government. And so, like, what do you do in that situation? And by the way, you're about to go testify, right? And so this conditions the whole way in which your testimony is received. And I think that's a pretty different problem than the Streisand effect.
I would suggest that the whole idea behind this, in my mind, as a layperson, my twin brother's an attorney, so I could go ahead and pontificate about the law ad nauseum.
Yeah, because you look like him.
Because you share a brain.
There's some sort of connection.
Their voices are indistinguishable. I've known Alex for a good long time. I can't tell. I can't hear. I've talked to Yevgeny on the phone. I can't tell his voice apart from Alex.
This is Yevgeny because
bullshit.
But I thought that this is a means to frankly to pursue accountability, and all this stuff is not like, I in the back of my mind I did have a concern early on, certainly while in uniform, about would this be seen as self-aggrandizing, enriching in some way. Although anybody that I guess knows anything about defamation suits, there's not really like a huge payout. But I didn't want to come across as litigious, and all these kind of issues deterred me both in uniform and then earlier on out of uniform. And then the statute expired, I guess, within a couple months of me, a statute of limitations of a year expired, while I was fresh out of the military. But I thought that at minimum, these types of efforts help advance the interests of accountability. And whether that's, in the case of a defamation suit where there's a discovery about what ended up happening, or the collusion between, let's say, the administration and its media proxies. And these are not speculative. These are factual statements. I could say this because there was a leak at some point. I think it was carried by, was it Politico or the Daily Mail, about a memo that was issued by the White House on attack lines on me. So, that kind of discovery would be worthwhile. Even the whistleblower retaliation stuff, in a way, would be useful in terms of discovering exactly what kind of communications occurred. Because these are not necessarily the most savvy actors. There are some people that would be particularly savvy and kept stuff out of email and or purged email or something like that. But there were other people that weren't, and a lot of the stuff would be out there and available. So advancing the interests of accountability especially in an administration that is really busy about handling the business of government and advancing U.S. interests, I see that as maybe a role for public servants or former public servants that think that there's a way to continue to serve.
So I want to go to audience questions, but I before I do, I want to just read your account of the scope and scale of this campaign. You write, I have been the target of a comprehensive defamation campaign by right-wing media outlets and their pundits. During a segment on Fox News with Laura Ingraham, John Lieu stated that I may have committed espionage for simply fulfilling my duties. This slanderous allegation was quickly picked up as a, quote, good point and worth discussing, unquote, by Gateway pundits Jim Hoff and Raheem Kassem, explicitly questioned my loyalty and patriotism over unfounded claims of back channels and espionage on a podcast with Steve Bannon. Quick side note from me, Bannon was incredulous about this. So this guy totally outflanked Bannon. Rudy Giuliani accused me of advising two governments. The magazine American Greatness provided a platform for attacking my character, publishing a fabricated tale by Lieutenant Colonel retired Jim Hickman about a verbal reprimanding that never took place, and my supposed radical political leanings, distaste for America, and actions as a political activist in uniform, all bald-faced lies. It goes on and on. Do you have any doubt that this campaign was coordinated?
Well, there were elements of this campaign that were definitely coordinated, again, based on this memo that accidentally. So it was the talking points that were released from the White House that went out to media proxies on how to kind of assassinate my character. So parts of it were how much of it needs to be explicit and how much of it needs to be implicit. I'm not sure if that really matters. I mean, if the instructions kind of go out, let's go after this individual, that is probably sufficient to call it coordinated. Does it need to be explicit as to what talking points to use? I don't think so, but I think on the face of it, it's clear that there was a level of coordination. There's another element. There's another interesting story. If you recall, during my testimony, there was this whole thing about being offered the Ministry of Defense position.
Yeah, you are, after all, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
Right, simultaneously.
From Southern California.
No, that's right. But, what's interesting about that is that I have high confidence in understanding where that originated. So while I was in Ukraine for the inauguration, there's this conversation about would you like to do this position, which is, by the way, is not outside the norm. There have been precedents in which former senior officers have served as ministers of defense. I think Lithuania in the 90s, and there was actually statute to support what parameters you can do that. But
and there
in this
are
case,
a number of American citizens who returned to Eastern Europe to become senior officials in Eastern European newly liberated governments, including our own Tomas Ilves.
Right. So based on my experience,
but
it usually turns out like a good thing. But in this case, I kind of reported it based on clearance, security clearance, or what. I didn't even actually have to do it, but I did it anyway, just because my experience with the DIA and stuff like that. It's always good to cover your bases. But I did that in a confidential memo that was then leaked to the minority council, Castor, and I've extremely high confidence that it originated from scouring my email. And I know for a fact that people were looking into my email because people, there was on vacation, there was one of my colleagues was covering my my portfolio and proceeded to get called in because he had the temerity to exchange emails with Ambassador Yovanovitch about something. So he was, there are data points, anecdotal, that kind of suggest that this was, this was again leaked to damage my credibility. No big deal, but
Do you feel like, let's fast forward to like the end of this suit. Do you feel like when you get to the end of it that you're going, if the court finds in your favor, but
there's no suit. Alex's point is that he missed his chance.
Oh yes, no. But if he had filed, would he what? No, sorry, that was you're right. There was no suit that but if you had filed and this had gotten to this point that you would have filed, do you think that you would have felt vindicated? Do you think that there would have been kind of some moment in which everyone had to go back and change their priors about how they thought about you? Or do you think that I don't know, you have this mixed message of you amplify the entire problem by filing suit, you then file suit, you get and if the resolution is not super sexy, it doesn't get covered in the press in some way. And
so what's the value? You file suit, you
what's
win.
The value? I get a Ferrari with the license plate Fox on it. No, I'm just kidding. But in reality, I think it's, and that's why the commercial component to it, to this defamation, defamation litigation actually wasn't even something that I had really seriously considered. It's not something I considered until after January 6th, and thinking about how these kinds of big lies develop, and there are little lies that support it, and imposing some sort of cost on these these entertainment institutions is a good way to go. My initial thought was, and what I had kind of had more robust conversations about with my legal team, was the idea of exposing the
having a legal team sounds incredibly expensive, by the way. More expensive than I appreciated when I was a younger person. I now understand that this is a very expensive thing to have. Sorry, just saying.
No, it's right, and I think because this, I ended up becoming being drawn into the public eye. There were folks that were helpful along the way that I didn't have to bear the cost for, in periods of time where I wouldn't even have close to the resources to do that. But that's why I actually mentioned the idea of civil society playing a role. It might not do that in all cases, but in particularly prominent cases, there are a couple that come to mind that it would be worthwhile going after, targeting, if you were, the media for the most kind of egregious behavior, imposing costs on them, and in a way it doesn't have to be having some ambiguity in the way that you apply these the NGOs might apply some of these suits also helps have the attorneys in the media organizations, or even the editorial teams, be a little bit more mindful about the kinds of stories that they propagate, because again, there's costs associated with it.
One of the you don't go into this in the piece, but I think one of the real challenges in this area is that the media organizations are not similarly situated. No. And so the reputable media organizations, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, basically have a policy that they do not settle libel suits in the absence of evidence that they have actually, aired. And they will correct their own errors. They will, but if you sue them, they will take you to trial. They will, they're not going to settle. Mm-hmm. And Fox doesn't do that. Fox settles, they settled with Seth Rich for Seth Rich's family for some very large sum of money. Yep. They will settle with Dominion Voting Systems and that's the statement. And and this actually makes it so if the New York Times ever really got hit with a devastating libel suit, they would take it to judgment, and Fox will never do that. They won't. They're not going to be. They're not going to be. What's it called? Gawkered, and that allows you.
Gawkered? Is that seriously like okay? Yes. Oh, wait,
just a verb I just invented. But
you mean the Hulk Hogan suit?
Yeah, they treat it as a cost of doing business, just as, by the way, they treat sexual harassment as a cost of doing business.
Well, it's not that. They all do. They all buy insurance. Do you have insurance, Ben, for like lawfare and for for publishing?
Yeah, but those are different. But first of all, that's different. I mean, we of course have a libel insurance policy,
right.
But that is principally to cover the cost of of litigation. It's not because we're being reckless and going out of, and you need libel insurance, whether you're planning to libel people or not. But Fox is actually running a business where they let irresponsible people on air live say all kinds of reckless things. And when you do that, you're planning to commit a certain amount of defamation.
Yes.
And maybe you have to pay out every now and then for what Sean Hannity says or what Tucker Carlson says. But heck, the revenues are enough to support that. So it falls into the category of cost of doing business, unless, as Alex's hypothesis suggests, they do it enough and enough people call them on it, and there's enough legal infrastructure to bring enough of these cases that the cost becomes prohibitive. Now, I don't know.
Class?
It can't be a class. You can't have a class action.
No, I mean, it wouldn't be a class, but I'm just kind of saying, like, that's the feeling. Like, that's like the general feeling is that there's some type of class.
If there's enough people who they're actually libeling and who juries would deliver real judgments to, then you're talking about, it would have a
cascading effect.
Right. Now, here's the problem.
Yep.
They have the best product liability standard in the world, right? Every other company, the product liability standard is, did you have due diligence, right? Did you do, was there a duty of care, right? Did you meet your duty of care? Their standard is actual malice, right? This is a crazy, and I think it's probably right, as a matter of...
Actual malice for who?
When they publish something, they are not liable unless they got something wrong with actual malice. That's their product liability standard, right? And what Alex is hypothesizing is that there's some significant class of people who could raise the cost of Fox doing business by calling them on what's effectively product liability. And I'm fascinated by this idea. I think Dominion is clearly an example. They're going to take Fox for a lot of money. And I don't doubt that Alex could have filed suit against certain entities. But I'm not sure I'm convinced that there are enough similarly situated people that you could take it out of the land of cost of doing business and into the land of you need to change your business model to be focused more on the truth. What do you think, Alex? Are there a lot of Alex Vindmans out there, or are you
I think there would be. I think you'd be surprised. I mean, I would say that anybody that's been, pulled into kind of this political theater, and demonized in a certain way, fits the bill. And I wonder if the threshold is painful suits or sufficient number of cases to drive some sort of change. Because then the calculus becomes, out of the sufficient number of cases, some of those cases will be, wins, and some of those cases will be losses, and that might be sufficient also on its own to drive some changes in both the editorial and the kind of legal, review side. So I think that there probably are. I wonder. I mean, I'm not sure if. I guess this wouldn't be other established political actors, but anybody that happens to get caught up in a similar manner, somebody, a common citizen that has been declared a political activist or something of that nature. That this seems to happen on a fairly regular basis, where you could have the NGOs reach out and help evaluate and potentially pursue this type of litigation. That's really what's required, is that you need to have the infrastructure to support it, because individuals won't be able to do that.
They're like, these suits are so political. I just really want to say, like, they're so political, and like, you're completely right, Alex. Like, they are political, and you have to have like an infrastructure to support it, and like that includes having people that are going to be the type of people that would normally be in the ACLU fighting like the type of like defamation suit that you're bringing, like being able to be like, come around and be like, no, this is actual defamation and we want to stop this. But like, they're very political. Like, I mean, I just really I had no idea until I was in a court that was deciding these cases, and I just kind of realized how much was at stake. So
all right, we have 7 minutes because Alex has he needs to be on at 7 at the top of the hour.
I'm going to be on Clubhouse. I'll be on Clubhouse for this South by Southwest engagement.
You're going to be on Clubhouse? I'll listen to you, Ben.
New.
Clubhouse.
Alex is going to be on Clubhouse. In the meantime, Jim McGuckin, the floor is yours.
I noticed Kilmick is back in the news. I was thinking of getting a yellow chalk kiosk and setting it up on K Street. But Colonel, you go by Colonel or Alex under the show?
Alex, please.
Okay. The IC report, and this is William Slayton on he's out there saying that it supports the idea that Trump was a Russian asset. And I just wanted to ask you, okay, so you shrugged, what is the definition of a Russian asset? He was talking about Trump parroting Giuliani stuff that he did with Ukraine and all that other stuff as being a Russian asset sort of move. Your opinion, please.
So it's interesting. I think you can actually probably call him an asset. Because an asset doesn't have to be a witting asset. He or she could be an unwitting asset, meaning that there's a whole craft around this. Whether it's a false flag, like a country uses the facade of a friendly country to get an agent to do something. So that's an example of an unwitting agent. I think the fact that you have the president carrying the water of the Russians, you could make the argument that the president was a unwitting agent. It's just that the president had a proclivity to see the world as an aspiring wannabe authoritarian might, and acted in a way that didn't serve U.S. interests, served in our adversaries' interests. I called it free chicken when I talked to Lester Holt back in September timeframe, because again he was
free chicken.
Free chicken. Always good to have free chicken. You don't have to put anything in. The free chicken just appears. In every pot.
Yep.
Yes. So that's the way I would describe it. I don't know if he's an agent or not. I mean, I've not. This is an ongoing debate within the community, and it's unclear.
The FBI has a super great term to cover this gray space, which is the co-optee, which is something less than an agent. And yet whose actions are in the service of. And there are witting and unwitting co-optees. You couldn't accuse them of agency, but you can observe that their actions reflect on a consistent basis the interest of the foreign power to one degree or another. That's Christopher Argyris, you get the penultimate question today.
Good evening, Alex. Great to see you again. So my one contact in Russia is a social media friend who's been celebrating Putin's brilliant answer of fucking old crazy man Biden, who is not a professional one, for whom USA, for me, the worst country in the world. And I won't read the rest, but you've probably heard all this stuff before. Basically someone who sees Putin as like godlike figure and the U.S. is a morally bankrupt country, and nothing redeeming from the U.S. So I'm somebody that feels like I can dialogue with anyone. I can find common ground, and I don't sort of believe that there's like kind of like no one that I can't talk to and find common ground and stuff like that. So how would you suggest that I sort of just not touch Putin when I talk to this person, or just or how can I help? I don't want to.
Is this dating advice, Christopher?
I would just say, I pride myself on being able to talk to a lot of different people also. But I would couch it without using trigger words like Putin, and just kind of, set up
words like
for your friend
name.
But but you could set up some sort of like other, very similar, like Rutin. You're talking about Rutin. But basically draw out a kind of a process tracing, same kind of logic, different kind. Yeah. And then you say, look, this is the way this leader behaves, but his name isn't Putin. Is that the way you want your leader to behave? And that tends to it kind of elicit a more thoughtful and less knee-jerk, kind of defensive response.
Charles, you get the last question today.
Charles, nice haircut. We haven't seen you in a while.
It's a COVID haircut. I had to do it myself, so this is.
The last time I gave myself a haircut, it looked exactly like that, if you'll believe it or not, and it was it looked good on you.
On our 365th episode, we are going to show pictures of what Kate's hair looked like on the first day.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that Kate's going to shave her head, and I was like, I didn't agree to that.
No, I don't volunteer you for grooming activities, but we are going to show pictures of what Kate looked like at the beginning of it.
Great, good. That sounds great. I have only gained -3 pounds.
So my core question is, Russia is increasingly active in the Middle East and North Africa, especially Libya and Syrian conflicts. To what extent should the U.S. also be active in that space, in the MENA space, to counter Russian influence, or is it a distraction for us and we should let them kind of dig their own hole, as it were?
I don't think it's a distraction. I'd say our calculus should be based on interests, resources, and risk. Those would be the kind of the key elements of a formula, and you need kind of a balanced approach. I would make the argument that realism and ceding a sphere of influence to Russia on the notion that somehow that's going to curry favor and make them less of a malign influence and less an aggressive player doesn't work. And being entirely activist on the kind of democracy agenda, which I'm supportive of, also doesn't always work, because sometimes our interests maybe don't necessarily align. So you need to have a kind of a grown-up assessment of interests, resources, and risk. Make a good, solid determination on whether involvement in North Africa is prudent. I'd say you could make a very good case for U.S. Support to Ukraine as very much in support of U.S. interests. You could make a case for general support of a democracy agenda. Unfortunately, it might not be consistent everywhere based on that calculation that I offered. But, three concentric circles. One is supporting existing democracies or allies that make us strong. Two is the struggling democracies that are moving in our direction. And three is a democracy agenda writ large, and, to advance the world and to look more like the way we want it is probably a good way to go about this.
Alex, you are a great American and a terrific Ukrainian defense minister. We are going to let you go because we know you have to be on the new snazzy social media Clubhouse. So we will see you soon. And thanks for joining us. We will be back tomorrow. And
should I make pierogi? Wait.
Pierogi.
Oh wait, sorry. I don't think that we have like plumbed my Swedish background, but the other part of my background is deeply Ukrainian, and my entire family like loves
Jews,
Ukrainian
right?
food. Like
Are they Ukrainians or Ukrainian Jews?
I mean, they were originally Ukrainian Jews. But like the religion got separated from the culture.
Interesting.
I know it is interesting. It's actually super interesting. But I love Ukrainian food. And Russian food. Like I just cannot get enough of it. Like it's just
you are one in a very small minority who's into Russian and Ukrainian food.
I know. I'm like the only person that likes cabbage and potatoes and grows and it's not even St. Patrick's Day anymore, but literally I would eat those every day. And I'm like, yeah, those are delicious. What is everyone's problem? I don't understand.
So before we break, I want to draw your attention to the results of this.
Do I have to go back and look at the poll?
Yeah. So first of all, it is effectively
I won
huge
the poll.
moral victory for plaid shirts.
Hi.
Since there's no question of my wearing plaid shirts, I would like to draw your attention to the relative balance between dog shirts and plain gray shirts. And I think the dog shirts have won this.
What is the phrase that I'm not allowed to?
Of 5.
What is the phrase that I'm not allowed to mention when Nate Persley comes on? What is, oh my God, it's just totally escaping me. The term that electoral people use to talk about ranked choice.
Ranked choice voting?
Voting. This is exactly why ranked choice
law. Exactly. And by the way, if you have not checked out the podcast,
you would have won if you had just omitted plaid shorts from this question.
Yeah, no, I just want to point out that in the straight up battle between dog shirt and plain shirts, dog shirts win by a factor of 5. So the dog shirts will be back.
Thank you. Yes.
They are undefeated and unbowed.
Yes. And the rhino shirt.
The rhino shirt. That counts as a dog shirt.
As a dog shirt. Okay.
Because rhinoceroses are basically dogs.
Have you seen the crazy videos of a baby rhinoceros when it doesn't have its little nose and it comes out and it hasn't hardened yet, and then it slowly develops?
They're very cute, baby rhinoceroses.
So cute.
And adult rhinoceroses are really not cute.
No, they're not. They're
really just gross and grouchy. So we will be back tomorrow. It'll be just us. I will be at the cabin in the woods. But here's the cool thing. Even if the cabin in the woods is a little bit hinky in the internet department, we will be here anyway because Kate can now pilot the ship and I can flit in and out depending on how cabin in the woods rural internet.
Don't be overbearing. I will post this by noon tomorrow. We will have something out by noon tomorrow, but don't harass me until then. If it hasn't come out by noon tomorrow, you can yell.
If it hasn't come up by 4, start bothering her. Leave her alone until 4.
Exactly.
Jesus Christ, it's Saturday. All that will start 22 out, and Sunday we have a mystery guest. It's my mystery guest, I think. Oh,
yeah.
Shit. I gotta find a mystery guest.
Shit, a mystery guest.
Yeah.
And I stole your childhood best friend for the last mystery guest. So you don't even get to have that out anymore. You have to find someone else.
Well, I got Taylor Swift, so and I hear Beyonce might be joining us. Anyway, all
Billie
about
Eilish. If you haven't watched that, by the way, Ben, you and Tammy should watch the Billie Eilish documentary. It's actually really, really smart and great and amazing. It's kind of amazing moment.
I'm excited about it. I am also just telling you all, check out A French Village and check out Le Podcast about A French Village. It's been good fun to do. I've been reading a lot of history of the German occupation of France, which has been a lot of fun. Victoria and Caroline know the mystery guest on Sunday will not be Peter Strzok. I can promise you that. all of that will start 22 hours and 54 minutes from now. And until then, we don't have fun anymore. And we don't have Peter Strzok as a mystery guest on Sunday.